You ever sit across from someone, coffee shop, family dinner, and they ask, "So what do you actually do?" And your mouth goes dry, because what are you supposed to say? That you're a marketer who also codes? That you studied biology but now you're deep into film editing and teaching yourself philosophy on the side? That last month you were obsessed with building furniture, and this month it's Spanish and behavioral economics? And there's this split second where you feel it. That familiar shame creeping up your spine, whispering that you're broken, that you can't stick with anything, that you're failing at being a normal, focused, successful person. But here's what nobody told you. That thing you've been apologizing for your entire life? It might be the exact skill set that makes you irreplaceable in the next 5 years. For decades, the world worshipped specialists. We built entire systems around the idea that success means picking one lane and going deeper and deeper until you can't see daylight. Career counselors, parents, teachers, they all said the same thing. Focus, commit, specialize. And if you couldn't, if your brain kept pulling you toward new things, unrelated things, then something was wrong with you. Jack of all trades, master of none. Dilettante, can't commit. You heard it so many times you started believing it. You looked at your chaotic resume and felt embarrassed. You watched other people climb their single ladder while you jumped between buildings, and you thought you were losing. But here's the truth they didn't tell you. The game just changed, and your brain has been preparing for the new rules this entire time. For the last 100 years, we lived in what psychologists call a kind learning environment. Predictable, stable, clear rules. Do the same thing over and over, get better, become valuable. Think chess. Think golf. The board doesn't change. The hole stays in the same place. You practice the same swing 10,000 times, you master it. That world rewarded the specialist, the person who could go a mile deep in one narrow field. And for a long time that worked. But we don't live in that world anymore. We're now in what researchers call a wicked learning environment. The rules change constantly. Feedback is delayed or unclear. Patterns shift before you can identify them. Think about fighting a fire. A firefighter walks into a burning building and every single situation is different. The knowledge from the last fire might not apply to this one. The environment is unpredictable, dangerous, alive. That's the world we're in now. Technology shifts every 6 months. Industries collapse overnight. The skills that made someone valuable 5 years ago are irrelevant today. And in this kind of world, the hyper-specialist starts developing blind spots. They're so deep in their single well they can't see the landscape changing around them. You, on the other hand, you've been training for wicked your whole life without even knowing it. There's a term for people like you, M-shaped professionals. Picture the letter M. 2 tall pillars with connecting bridges between them. Now compare that to other shapes. The I-shaped person, classic specialist. 1 pillar going deep. Then there's the dash-shaped person, and this is the trap. A mile wide, an inch deep. They dabble in everything but never commit long enough to actually get good. And that creates a specific kind of anxiety because there's no foundation. You feel like you're floating. But the M-shaped professional is different. You have depth, real depth, in 2, maybe 3 areas. Let's say your first pillar is graphic design. You spent years building that skill. You're genuinely good at it. Pays your bills. But your second pillar is psychology. You went deep there too. You understand how people think, what motivates them, why they make the choices they make. And those horizontal bars connecting your pillars? That's your curiosity about neuroscience, your interest in storytelling, your fascination with data analysis. Suddenly you're not just another designer. You become the person who creates work that actually moves people because you understand both the craft and the human mind. That combination is rare. That combination is powerful. That combination is what companies are desperate to find. And the data is starting to prove it. The World Economic Forum just released their Future of Jobs report. By 2030, less than 5 years away, 39% of workers' core skills will need to change. Not improve. Not evolve. Change completely. The skills rising fastest? Creative thinking, analytical thinking, flexibility, resilience, the ability to synthesize information across totally different domains. Translation: the future belongs to people who can move between worlds, who can stand at intersections, who can see connections that specialists miss. But let's be real about what this actually takes. You can't just casually dabble in 10 things at once and call yourself M-shaped. That's the dash-shaped trap, and it leads straight to anxiety and burnout. The secret is something called serial mastery. You pick one pillar and you commit to it for a real season, maybe 6 months, maybe 18. You build that one leg until it's strong, until you've gotten to about 80% competence. Not world-class expert, not the best in the world, just fluent. Fluent enough that you can solve most problems in that domain without constantly Googling the basics. And when your curiosity in that area starts to feel satisfied, when you've absorbed what you needed, you make a conscious choice. This isn't quitting like a dabbler who runs away the second things get hard. This is strategic quitting. It's a graduation. You deliberately choose to start building your next pillar. And here's where it gets weird. The anxiety most people feel doesn't come from the work itself. It comes from the choice. Which pillar do I pick first? How do I know it's the right one? Here's what you need to understand. Lower the stakes. You're not choosing your forever career. You're choosing what to focus on this season. Pick the one that creates the most stability, the one that could become your good enough day job. Or pick the one that has the most energy around it right now, the one you can't stop thinking about. Just pick one. Because indecision is what kills momentum. And here's what happens when you move between disciplines, when you build multiple pillars over time. You're not just collecting random skills. You're training your brain in something called far transfer. A specialist uses near transfer, taking a skill and applying it to a very similar problem. If you're a Java programmer, you can probably pick up Python easily because the logic is similar. But you're doing something different. You're seeing the underlying structure in one field and recognizing that same structure in a completely different domain. A person who understands how tree roots branch and spread might suddenly look at a company's database architecture and see a better way to organize information. A musician who understands harmony and tension might look at software code and recognize a more elegant structure. That's far transfer. Seeing the music, not just the notes. And all those seemingly random interests you've been collecting? That obsession with medieval architecture. That phase where you learned about mycology. That month you spent studying color theory. They're not wasted time. They're building a library of metaphors, of mental models, that you'll draw from to create insights nobody else can see. And this is what artificial intelligence can't do. AI can process information. It can generate text, create images, analyze data. But it can't stand at the intersection of technology and human emotion and figure out what actually matters. It can't look at a technical problem and solve it using creative thinking borrowed from biology. It can't design an experience that feels deeply human because it doesn't understand both the code and the story. That's M-shaped work. That's you. Now I'm not going to pretend this path is comfortable. Being M-shaped means cycling through expert and beginner over and over again. Your resume doesn't look like a clean ladder climbing upward. It looks more like a Jackson Pollock painting. Chaotic, colorful, impossible to categorize. But here's the thing about that straight ladder everyone told you to climb. Remember Kodak? Blockbuster? They were specialists. The best in the world at what they did. And they became irrelevant in less than a decade because the world shifted and they couldn't. Meanwhile, you've been training for uncertainty this entire time. Every time you dove into something new, you were practicing the skill of adaptation. Building cognitive flexibility. And you might need to reframe something else, your day job. A lot of brilliant polymaths throughout history had stable jobs that didn't drain them. Einstein worked as a patent clerk. It wasn't his passion, but it gave him stable ground. Enough mental energy left over to let his mind wander through the universe. A low-drain job, something you're competent at but that doesn't consume you, can be the platform that lets you build your other pillars. A high-passion, high-stress job might sound exciting, but if it demands 110% of your energy, there's no room left for the exploration your brain is craving. And that's when the resentment starts. That feeling of being trapped. The final piece you need is a system. Your brain is a high-output idea factory. You get fascinated by things constantly. But your working memory is small, like a workbench that can only hold a few projects at a time. If you don't move finished ideas off that bench, there's no room to build new ones. Everything gets cluttered and overwhelming. So when you get obsessed with Stoic philosophy for 2 weeks, take notes. When you spend a month learning about permaculture, capture what you learned. Put it in Notion, Obsidian, a simple Google Doc, doesn't matter. Then when that fascination naturally fades, you can let it go without guilt. You're not abandoning it. You're archiving it. And 3 years from now, when you're working on a completely different project, you might stumble on those old notes and realize that the structure of a forest ecosystem is exactly like the structure of a healthy team. That's the moment of magic. But it only happens if you captured the dots so you can connect them later. The companies that understand this shift, they're already changing how they hire. They're not asking, "What's your specialty?" anymore. They're asking, "What unique combination do you bring?" They're looking for creative technologists who can code and imagine, strategists who understand both data and human behavior, leaders who can navigate technical complexity and organizational change. 170 million new jobs are going to be created by 2030. But they won't be for people who can only do what they did yesterday. They'll be for people who can learn, adapt, synthesize, and bridge gaps that algorithms can't touch. Innovation has never come from staying inside one discipline. It comes from stealing an idea from architecture and applying it to software design. From using storytelling techniques to make data actually mean something. From understanding psychology well enough to build technology that serves humans instead of frustrating them. That's synthesis. And it only happens when you have multiple deep areas of knowledge to pull from. When you can stand in the space between fields and see what everyone else is missing. So if you've spent your entire life feeling scattered, unable to commit to just one path, beating yourself up because you can't be normal, maybe you need to hear this. Maybe you've been preparing for exactly this moment. Maybe what you thought was your weakness has always been your strength, and the world just wasn't ready for it yet. You're not broken. You're not unfocused. You're not a failure. You're a scanner, a bridge builder, someone whose brain is wired to see how different worlds of knowledge connect. Pick your first pillar. Build it with real focus. Use your day job as a stable platform, not a prison. Create a system to hold all those sparks of curiosity so they don't overwhelm you. You were never meant to master just one thing. You were meant to be the person who sees how everything connects. And the world is finally ready for that. If this resonated with you, if you've been feeling this your whole life, subscribe. This channel exists to explain human behavior simply, to help you understand yourself without the guilt. You're not alone in this, and you're exactly where you need to be.